Secure your oxygen masks, double-check your heavy carabiners, and firmly anchor your ice axes into the absolute bedrock of this mountain, because the global financial tectonic plates are shifting beneath our boots and the ultimate avalanche is actively triggering. Welcome to the high-altitude expedition, climbers. The severe emergency flare, currently illuminating the pitch-black sky above our frozen base camp, is designated Ripple just made a massive move. Crypto market not ready. And if you are currently standing in the treacherous death zone, completely paralyzed by the thin air, and staring at an artificially frozen spot price of $1.32, you are fundamentally failing to understand the lethal dynamics of this ascent. The civilian retail climbers are acting like absolute amateurs who entirely underestimated the brutal reality of the summit push. They are staring at the bleeding red candlestick charts, feeling the agonizing psychological frostbite of a manufactured macroeconomic winter, and voluntarily unbuckling their safety harnesses just to escape the sheer, agonizing boredom of the climb. But up here at the absolute peak of the expedition, our deep radar meteorological arrays have just isolated an undeniable, massive structural anomaly that proves the final summit push is already violently underway. The legacy financial mountaineers have deliberately engineered a massive, highly calculated boredom trap specifically designed to freeze out the weak-handed retail tourists. They are artificially pinning the price down, completely starving the market of immediate oxygen, forcing the impatient climbers to pack up their digital tents and abandon their fortified positions for absolute fractions of a penny. But behind this impenetrable wall of manufactured silence, a massive, uncontainable shift is taking place that the general crypto market is completely unprepared to handle. Ripple is actively triggering a monumental financial avalanche, violently reshaping the entire topography of the global economic mountain. You do not survive the brutal, multi-year regulatory winters and the most punishing cryptographic blizzards just to surrender your gear mere meters from the absolute pinnacle of human wealth generation. The sovereign syndicates are merely waiting for the perfect geopolitical atmospheric pressure to completely shatter the frozen resistance. Do not let the manufactured stillness of the glacier break your mental conditioning. The intelligence is definitively verified, the climbing routes are entirely secured, and the absolute silence you are experiencing right now is the terrifying vacuum of sound that occurs milliseconds before the entire side of the mountain violently gives way. Hold your positions with absolute conviction, because the artificial ice wall of the legacy banking system is about to shatter. The ultimate summit push has officially begun, and the retail market is entirely unprepared for the violent velocity of this massive ascent. Pivot your thermal optics directly toward the hidden, highly classified supply routes traversing the absolute darkest face of this mountain, because we must forensically expose the exact extraction mechanisms being utilized to systematically drain the public base camps entirely dry of their essential oxygen. The corporate financial media is actively deploying heavy acoustic jamming signals, falsely claiming that institutional liquidity has completely evacuated the digital expedition due to extreme macroeconomic gridlock and the paralyzing fear of regulatory avalanches. But let me drop a massive reality check directly into your high-altitude briefing interface. If you blindly execute the copy and paste survival algorithms fed to you by the very mega corporations actively trying to sabotage your ascent, the mountain will ruthlessly zero out your oxygen supply and permanently bury your portfolio under the snow. We have actively bypassed the public monitors and sliced into the classified data streams emanating from the deepest institutional cold storage vaults on the planet. A glaring multi-million-dollar structural anomaly immediately lights up our offensive terminal. In the absolute dead of night, while the retail tourists were sleeping in their freezing tents, an unidentified sovereign whale deployed a highly sophisticated algorithmic trading bot to rapidly accumulate over $35 million in physical XRP in under 1 hour. Furthermore, on-chain meteorological data confirms that an absolutely staggering $738 million worth of this specific digital asset was violently ripped off the public exchanges and transferred directly into heavily fortified cold storage bunkers in a single, unannounced move. How does an institutional strike force of that magnitude push massive amounts of concentrated fiat capital into the digital ecosystem without violently tripping the public exchange alarms and launching the token price into the stratosphere? The answer lies in the highly secretive, completely unregulated subterranean ice caves known as over-the-counter dark pools. These massive asset managers are not utilizing the brightly lit public trading interfaces to execute their massive acquisition orders, because doing so would instantly detonate a massive price explosion and permanently destroy their covert accumulation margins. Instead, they are utilizing localized liquidity mercenaries to systematically absorb the discarded tokens of every panicked retail operator who drops their gear under the crushing pressure of the artificial bear market. They are silently hoarding the physical float inside these encrypted dark pool bunkers, mathematically locking away the circulating supply before the massive macroeconomic liquidity wave officially hits the summit and completely shatters the public exchanges. The dark nodes are draining the mountain dry, entirely shielded from the public eye. The smartest institutional Sherpas are quietly vacuuming up the absolute last remnants of the floating supply while the amateurs stare at completely dead, manipulated trading charts. Direct your absolute attention toward the federal regulatory stormfront currently hovering directly over the summit, because the absolute largest geopolitical blizzard hindering our final ascent has just been completely cleared by a highly coordinated, classified insider maneuver. For years, the civilian climbing population has been fed a continuous stream of corrupted meteorological data packets, led to believe that the United States government had permanently closed the summit routes to prevent the integration of this specific decentralized ledger technology. However, the top-secret intelligence we just decrypted completely shatters that manufactured illusion. The legacy banking cartels deliberately utilized the public fear of federal prosecution as a massive psychological deterrent to artificially suppress the market valuation, forcing weak-handed retail operators to drop their essential oxygen tanks out of sheer terror while the global elites quietly hoarded the physical supply in the shadows. But the absolute shocker that just hit the monitors changes the entire topography of the mountain. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission have executed an unprecedented joint directive, officially and explicitly classifying XRP as a digital commodity. This is not a minor bureaucratic patch. This is a massive Category 5 avalanche override that permanently removes the suffocating, highly restrictive label of an unregistered security. The regulatory storm clouds have permanently parted. The massive institutional whales like Goldman Sachs, who just disclosed an absolutely staggering $153 million position across 4-spot XRP exchange-traded funds, no longer have to operate in the shadows of the dark web. They are openly planting their corporate flags on the side of the mountain. Furthermore, our inside operatives on Capitol Hill have confirmed that the highly anticipated Clarity Act legislative network upgrades are actively moving through the highest levels of the Senate. This impending legislative victory promises to legally cement this commodity status directly into the federal source code, effectively disabling the final alarm systems for trillions of dollars in sidelined institutional capital to flood the ecosystem. You are witnessing the exact moment the global financial syndicate officially deactivated their offensive jamming signals and authorized the institutional takeover. The institutions engineered the maximum level of regulatory fear to acquire your digital property at a steep wholesale discount, and now they hold the ultimate master key. The regulatory malware that terrified the amateur markets has completely evaporated into thin air, leaving a clear, unobstructed digital highway for massive, multi-billion-dollar capital inflows. Do not drop your payload just as the vault doors violently swing open to reveal the absolute pinnacle of the summit. The vital oxygen is completely returning to the frozen ecosystem. Expand the operational theater to encompass the entire international logistics grid, because a master expedition leader understands that securing the summit is absolutely useless if you do not possess a flawless, high-velocity safety tether capable of anchoring the entire global financial system to the bedrock. The legacy messaging system known as SWIFT is actively dying on the operational table, completely freezing over at high altitude, and the military-grade operation to replace it is no longer theoretical. It is highly active and ruthlessly efficient. Our international proxy servers have just intercepted critical telemetry, confirming that the enterprise stablecoin infrastructure has violently expanded past the $1.5 billion threshold. This is not a drill. This is the foundational layer of global commodities and securities migrating directly onto this specific decentralized network. Ripple has actively entered the Monetary Authority of Singapore's highly classified regulatory sandbox to pilot this exact digital architecture for cross-border trade finance, a massive, uncontainable step directly into the multi-trillion-dollar institutional settlement market. But the ultimate weapon in this geopolitical arsenal is the explosive scaling of the RLUSD stablecoin deployment itself. The RLUSD protocol is actively acting as a massive, unstoppable kinetic burn mechanism deeply embedded within the network's foundational source code. Every single time a multinational megacorporation executes a massive, multi-million-dollar cross-border settlement utilizing this digital framework, a fractional percentage of the native XRP token is automatically incinerated by the network code, permanently erasing it from the historical circulating supply. This is equivalent to our expedition mechanically consuming its own heavy climbing gear to generate infinite, unstoppable upward velocity, leaving absolutely no trace for the legacy banking system to track or weigh us down. The network is systematically incinerating the native supply, while Wall Street desperately attempts to hoard the remaining physical float inside their encrypted offline vaults. This is the exact cryptographic formula for an unprecedented violent supply shock that aligns perfectly with our ultimate summit sequence. The sudden violent jumps in on-chain activity you see are the global market algorithms desperately attempting to price in this massive international adoption before the retail sector realizes the summit ridge has already been fully breached. Ripple has executed aggressive, highly classified corporate acquisitions, securing unassailable financial services licenses across the European and Asian corridors, guaranteeing total global saturation. The digital replacement is fully operational, and the old fiat architecture is being systematically dismantled line by line. The global payment rails have officially been laid directly into the ice, and the massive macroeconomic shift nobody expected is actively rewiring the entire planet. Hold the absolute line. Download the final classified extraction parameters directly into your encrypted survival modules immediately, because identifying the sovereign manipulation and successfully ascending the absolute steepest face of this financial mountain is entirely useless if you are permanently trapped in the death zone when the extreme volatility finally strikes and the ultimate avalanche is triggered. We have empirically proven the covert dark pool accumulation by the billion-dollar exchange-traded funds, the explosive utility growth of the kinetic combustion engine, the massive regulatory green light from the federal agencies, and the colossal international banking deployments successfully executed through aggressive global acquisitions. So what is the ultimate mathematical destination of this digital asset when the global liquidity cycle officially peaks, the universal network alignment is finalized, and the algorithmic containment field is permanently shattered? Highly classified macroeconomic risk assessments, continuously refined by elite quantitative strategists at Tier 1 institutions, have established a mathematically grounded baseline target ranging from $8 to a staggering $20 per token for the conclusion of this specific processing cycle. To the uninitiated civilian operator, currently psychologically traumatized by months of agonizing artificial suppression, an $8 projection sounds like impossible, utopian science fiction designed merely to generate false hope and trap retail liquidity inside a freezing, failing matrix. But to the elite expedition mastermind, who understands the absolute mathematical certainty of a violently constricting physical supply curve colliding head-on with exponential institutional utility bandwidth, an $8 valuation is merely a highly conservative orbital waypoint on the journey to total structural dominance. However, you cannot successfully navigate this high-stakes digital wealth transition without a ruthlessly disciplined, completely emotionless framework. Human greed, impatience, and panic are the ultimate fatal vulnerabilities when attempting to achieve a clean tactical extraction from a dying financial matrix. I strictly mandate the immediate implementation of an automated execution strategy known as the Thirds Protocol. When the network price violently shatters the historical all-time high resistance parameter of $3.84, you must automatically execute a tactical payload release and sell exactly 33% of your holdings. This unemotional maneuver secures a complete absolute recovery of your initial fiat capital deployment, instantly transforming the remainder of your digital portfolio into pure stress-free profit. The secondary operational tranche is programmed to ride the algorithmic liquidity wave toward the ultimate institutional target zone, serving as your primary liberation vehicle out of the fiat system. Secure your private keys, trust the unshakable data, and execute your final summit extraction protocol flawlessly. We summit, we extract, we conquer.